She was 8 weeks pregnant, alone, scared. Sitting in that examination room, she never expected to see him again. The man who abandoned her 8 years ago, her first love, her deepest wound. Now he was her doctor, and the secrets between them were about to tear them both apart. This is a story about love, loss, and a secret that could change two lives forever. What happens next will leave you speechless. Don't skip ahead. Every moment matters. And if you believe in second chances, hit subscribe because this story will make you believe in fate. Angela Rivera stared at the positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. 8 weeks pregnant, alone. The father had walked out 3 days ago when she told him, mumbling something about not being ready before disappearing from her life completely. At 31 years old, Angela thought she'd experienced every kind of heartbreak possible. But sitting in her small Atlanta apartment, she realized some pain never really goes away. It just waits for the perfect moment to come back. Her best friend Teresa had been the one to push her into making the doctor's appointment. Teresa showed up with prenatal vitamins and a fierce determination that Angela couldn't argue with. She'd researched the best clinics in Atlanta and even made the appointment herself, writing the date on a sticky note and putting it on Angela's refrigerator. This baby needed care, Teresa had said firmly, and Angela was strong enough to do this alone. She'd survived worse, and she had survived worse, much worse. 8 years ago, Angela had been madly in love with a man named Julian Cross. They dated for 4 beautiful years, talking about marriage and children and growing old together. Julian had been everything to her, her best friend, her partner, her future. But one night, without warning or explanation, he vanished. His clothes were gone, his phone disconnected, and Angela was left with nothing but questions that would never be answered. The worst part was what Angela had been carrying that night, a secret she'd planned to share with Julian the very next morning. She was 10 weeks pregnant. With their baby, she'd bought tiny yellow baby shoes and practiced how she'd tell him, imagining his joy and excitement. But Julian disappeared before she could say a word. And in the devastating weeks that followed, as Angela's heart shattered into pieces, her body gave up too. At 11 weeks, she miscarried. The stress and heartbreak had been too much. She lost Julian and their baby in the same breath, and the grief nearly destroyed her. It took 2 years of therapy before Angela could function normally again. She'd rebuilt herself slowly, carefully, learning to live with the ghost of what could have been. She'd promised herself she'd never let anyone hurt her like that again. Now, 8 years later, here she was, pregnant again, alone again. History repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. The morning of her first prenatal appointment, Angela's hands shook as she drove across Atlanta. The clinic was in a modern building with large windows and calming blue walls. She checked in at the reception desk and filled out the required forms, her pen pausing at certain questions: previous pregnancies. She checked yes and wrote briefly. 1 miscarriage at 11 weeks. Father's information? She left it blank. Some spaces were meant to stay empty. The waiting room was quiet, filled with other women at various stages of pregnancy. Angela watched them, trying to calm her racing heart. A nurse finally called her name and led her down a hallway to an examination room. The nurse was kind and chatty, taking Angela's vitals and handing her a hospital gown. "Dr. Cross will be with you shortly," she said with a warm smile. Angela changed into the gown and sat on the examination table, the paper crinkling beneath her. The room felt too cold, too exposed. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the anatomical posters on the wall, trying to steady her breathing. This was just a routine appointment. Everything would be fine. Minutes passed slowly. Angela heard footsteps approaching in the hallway, getting closer. The door handle turned. The door opened, and Angela's entire world came crashing down. Because standing in the doorway, wearing a white doctor's coat and holding a clipboard, was Julian Cross, her Julian. The man she'd loved with every fiber of her being. The man who had destroyed her. The man she'd spent 8 years trying to forget. Time stopped. Neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. Julian's eyes went wide with shock, his face draining of all color. The clipboard slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor, the sound echoing in the tiny room, Like a gunshot, Angela couldn't process what she was seeing. This had to be a nightmare. Julian couldn't be here. He couldn't be her doctor. This couldn't be happening. But it was happening. Julian stood frozen in the doorway, staring at her with the same shock and disbelief she felt. 8 years of silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Julian's lips moved, and Angela heard her name spoken so softly it was almost a prayer. Angela? The sound of his voice shattered something inside her. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and immediate. She wanted to scream, to run, to demand answers, but her throat had closed up, trapping all the words inside. Julian bent down slowly and picked up the clipboard with shaking hands. Angela watched him scan the chart, saw the exact moment his eyes landed on the words that changed everything. Prenatal examination. 8 weeks pregnant. His gaze snapped from the paper to her face, then down to her stomach. The unspoken question hung in the air between them. Loud as a scream, Angela found her voice then, sharp and cold. No, it's not yours. Relief flickered across Julian's face for just a second before it was replaced by pain. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. Angela, I can explain. 8 years too late, Julian. The words came out steadier than she felt, hard and unforgiving. A knock on the door interrupted them. The nurse poked her head in, her smile fading when she saw the tension. Everything okay, Dr. Cross? Julian didn't take his eyes off Angela. Yes, thank you. Just give us a moment. The nurse disappeared, and silence fell again. Julian set the clipboard down carefully on the counter. I can get another doctor for you, Dr. Patterson or Dr. Williams. You shouldn't have to. Don't. Angela cut him off, anger burning through the shock. Don't pretend to know what I should or shouldn't do. You lost that right a long time ago. Julian flinched like she'd slapped him. You're right, I just thought. You thought what? That you could make this easier? Angela's voice trembled. You're good at making things disappear, aren't you? Pain flashed across Julian's face. Angela, please. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not a day has gone by that I haven't. Stop. Angela held up a hand, tears streaming down her face now. I don't want to hear it. Not here. Not like this. Julian nodded, wiping his eyes. You're right. This isn't the time or place. Let me get Dr. Patterson. She's excellent, and you'll be in good hands. Angela wanted to say yes, wanted to let him leave and never see him again. But something stopped her. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the 8 years of unanswered questions. Maybe it was simply that she was tired of running. No, she said firmly. You're going to do your job. I waited 3 weeks for this appointment. My baby's health is more important than whatever this is between us. Surprise flickered in Julian's eyes. Are you sure? I'm sure. But let's be clear. You're my doctor. Nothing more. We keep our past out of it, and when this is over, we go back to being strangers, understood? Understood. The examination that followed was awkward and painful. Julian asked questions in a professional voice, and Angela answered mechanically. But when it came time for the ultrasound, everything changed. Julian squeezed gel onto Angela's stomach and pressed the ultrasound wand against her skin. He moved it slowly, eyes fixed on the monitor. And then, through the speakers, came a sound that made everything else disappear. A rhythmic whooshing, fast and strong. The baby's heartbeat. Angela's breath caught. Tears spilled from her eyes. That was her baby, real and alive and growing inside her. She glanced at Julian and saw that he'd gone completely still. His eyes were locked on the monitor, where a tiny figure was visible, a rapid flutter in its center. His hand holding the wand was shaking, trembling visibly. And when she looked at his face, she saw tears streaming down his cheeks. Strong heartbeat, Julian managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. Very strong. Everything looks good. He continued the examination, but his shoulders were shaking with silent sobs. And Angela knew why. She knew what he was remembering. You knew, she whispered. You knew I was pregnant 8 years ago. Julian's hand stilled. He didn't look at her. Yes. How? Julian set down the ultrasound wand and wiped the gel from her stomach. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. Teresa told me, 2 years after I left, I ran into her at a coffee shop. She was furious. She told me what a coward I was, and she told me you'd been pregnant, that you'd lost the baby because of the stress of me leaving. Angela covered her face with her hands, sobbing. 8 years of grief poured out. I'm so sorry, Julian whispered, his voice broken. Angela, I need you to understand why I left. 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with a genetic heart condition, potentially fatal. The doctor said I needed immediate surgery, that without it, I could die within a year. They also said there was a 50% chance I would pass it to any children I had. Angela lowered her hands, staring at him. I was terrified, Julian continued. I was 26, and doctors were telling me I might die, that any children I had might inherit this condition. All I could think about was you. How we talked about having kids. I couldn't saddle you with a dying husband and sick children. So I left. I went to my parents, had the surgery, spent months recovering. I thought I was protecting you. That wasn't your choice to make. Angela's voice rose. You should have told me. You should have let me choose. I know, Julian's voice broke. I was young and scared and stupid. When I found out from Teresa what happened, what I'd caused, I nearly didn't survive that knowledge. The guilt almost destroyed me. I became an OB/GYN because I thought maybe I could help bring life into the world to make up for the life I'd taken. Angela was crying so hard she could barely breathe. You didn't just take our baby. You took everything. My trust, my ability to love, my belief that I was worth staying for. You were perfect. Julian dropped to his knees beside the examination table. You are perfect. The problem was always me, my cowardice, my fear. I robbed you of your choice, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. They stayed like that, both crying, both broken. Finally, Angela wiped her eyes. Is the baby healthy? Yes, everything looks perfect, but I want you back in a week for more tests. Angela nodded, still processing everything. I can transfer your care, Julian said quietly. You don't have to see me again. Angela looked at him, at this man who had once been her entire world. I'll think about it. The next week was torture. Angela couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about that appointment, about Julian's tears, about the truth he'd finally told her. When her next appointment came, Angela surprised herself. At the reception desk, when asked if she wanted to switch doctors, she heard herself say, I'll stay with Dr. Cross. Julian looked shocked when he walked into the examination room and found her there. You came back. Not for you, for my baby. You're a good doctor, Julian. I trust you with my child's health. Over the following weeks, something shifted. Julian showed up for every appointment, professional but caring. When Angela texted him at 2 a.m., panicking about cramping, he called immediately and talked her down. When she mentioned craving a specific soup, it appeared at her door the next day with a note. For you and the baby. Jam. Slowly, carefully, walls started coming down. Julian proved he wasn't going anywhere. He came to childbirth classes. He helped assemble the crib. He brought food when she was too tired to cook. He read pregnancy books and asked questions and treated her like she was precious. At 20 weeks came the anatomy scan. Julian cleared extra time for it. When the baby appeared on screen in stunning detail, Angela gasped. She could see tiny fingers, toes, the curve of the spine. Everything looks perfect, Julian said warmly. Do you want to know the gender? Yes, please. Julian smiled. Congratulations, Angela. You're having a girl. Angela burst into tears. A daughter. Julian printed dozens of ultrasound pictures, looking at them with such tenderness it made her chest ache. She's beautiful, he whispered, just like her mother. Julian, Angela said quietly, I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated you, you were always there. Seeing you again, spending this time with you, it's bringing everything back. Julian went very still. Angela, I don't know if I can fully trust you again, she continued, but I don't want to keep pushing you away. My daughter deserves people who love her, and despite everything, I think you already do. I love her because she's part of you, Julian said, tears in his eyes. And I've never stopped loving you. Not for one single day. Then prove it, Angela said. Be here. Really be here. Show me you're not going to disappear again. I will, Julian promised. I swear I won't let you down. And he didn't. Over the next 4 months, Julian became Angela's constant. He never missed an appointment or a milestone. He showed up every single time. At 37 weeks, Angela's water broke. She called Julian at 3 a.m., and he arrived at her door in 12 minutes, disheveled and wide-eyed. Ready to meet your daughter? He asked with a shaky smile. Terrified, Angela admitted. You're going to be amazing. I'll be right there with you. He wasn't her doctor that day. Hospital policy wouldn't allow it. But he was there anyway, holding her hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement. And when Angela's daughter finally entered the world with a strong cry, Julian was crying as hard as she was. The nurse placed the baby on Angela's chest. Angela looked down into that tiny, perfect face. Her daughter, her miracle. She's so beautiful, Julian whispered, touching the baby's small hand. Tiny fingers wrapped around his immediately. I want to name her Diana, Angela said. It means divine, because she is. Julian nodded, unable to speak through his tears. Thank you for being here, Angela said softly. I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for letting me, Julian whispered, for giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. The first weeks with Diana were overwhelming and beautiful. Julian came every evening, bringing dinner, holding the baby, singing lullabies. Angela watched him one night, Diana asleep against his chest, and felt her last walls crumble. Julian, he looked up. I forgive you. Julian went very still. Angela, I'm not saying it doesn't still hurt sometimes, but you've proven you've changed. You're here to stay, and I believe you. Julian carefully stood, still holding the sleeping baby, and sat beside her. I love you. I've loved you for 11 years. You and Diana are my family if you'll have me. Angela touched his face. I love you too. I probably never stopped. Can we try again? Angela smiled, really smiled. Yes, but no more secrets. No more running. We face everything together. Together, Julian promised, for the rest of our lives. 6 months later, Angela watched Julian on the floor with Diana, who was learning to sit up. When the baby finally balanced on her own, Julian erupted in cheers that made Diana dissolve into giggles. Angela's heart felt so full. This was her family, not the one she'd planned 8 years ago, but it was real and beautiful and theirs. Julian looked up and caught her watching. What are you thinking about? Angela settled beside them on the floor, stroking Diana's soft curls. I'm thinking about how sometimes the worst endings make room for the best beginnings. Julian reached for her hand. Does that mean you're happy? Angela looked at him, then at their daughter. Yes, I'm happy, because sometimes love gets a second chance when you least expect it. Sometimes the person who broke you is the only one who can help you heal. And sometimes the story you thought was over is really just getting started. Diana giggled, reaching for both of them, and Julian and Angela leaned in together, creating a circle of love around their daughter, their family, their future. In that moment, Angela knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. Every tear, every heartbreak, every lonely night had led her here. The universe had given her signs after all. She just had to learn to read them. Sometimes the person who broke you is the only one who can help you heal. Sometimes love gets a second chance when you least expect it. And sometimes the ending you feared becomes the beginning you needed all along. Have you ever gotten a second chance with someone from your past? Or do you believe some things are better left behind? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications because next week's story is about a woman who found her husband's secret phone, and what she discovered changed everything. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching. Remember, every ending is just a new beginning waiting to happen. I'll see you in the next story.